welcome to Aerotech's Automation1 2.6 Motion Control Platform Release Update. Aerotech is a company that solves your toughest precision motion and automation challenges. Automation1 is a motion control platform consisting of software-based controls and development tools, plus hardware-based drives for servo motors and other devices. My name is Daniel Hong, and I am a controls product manager for Aerotech. Today we'll be going over a couple of the new features for Aerotech's Automation1 2.6 products. Within the beta features, we have the Modbus TCP IP for drive-based controllers. We have new features such as the sockets interface and MultisinePlus frequency response. For studio improvements, we have several improvements in machine setup, device catalog, configure workspace, develop workspace, AeroScript improvements, as well as additional other improvements. For API, we have improvements within our .NET, C, and Python and LabVIEW API. Within MachineApps, we have Go Launchpad branding, camera module support, and more. And in addition, we have more improvements, including several tuning improvements, bandwidth improvements, error handling, and more. We will first begin by going over the beta features, which specifically includes the Modbus TCP IP for drive-based controllers. So this feature is currently within the beta stages, but you can now configure a drive-based controller as a Modbus TCP IP client or Modbus TCP IP server. The drive-based controller has two industrial Ethernet ports labeled A and B. For Modbus, only port A is available for communication. Next, we have new features, including the sockets interface official release, MultisinePlus frequency response. Additional commands have been added to the sockets interface. You can now use AeroScript to check which TCP client sockets have connected to a TCP server socket, read or write 64-bit integer arrays to and from AeroScript sockets, perform error handling, and more. Two new AeroScript socket examples have been added to the examples folder. In addition, these are also available in the help website. Next, we have a new MultisinePlus frequency response module. MultisinePlus is now the default frequency response type and recommended by Aerotech for most systems. This can now be triggered by a new AeroScript function as well. More details for this are available in the help file. We'll now be going over some studio improvements, including various improvements to machine setup, configure workspace, AeroScripts, and more. Machine setup now behaves more intelligently than ever before. Parameter updates are now based on changes made in each session. Machine setup no longer treats each session as a new system configuration. For access parameter changes, if no machine setup changes were made, no parameter changes will be made. In addition, if user unit change, machine setup now calculates a new count per unit and scale related to parameter values. If feedback configuration changes, machine setup will now calculate new values only for parameters related to the primary and auxiliary feedback configuration. Machine setup now includes more intelligent Galvo laser scan head device changes as well. Before upgrading to 2.6, please verify that you have no changes that were made to the machine setup configuration after machine setup was last completed. After upgrading to 2.6, machine setup creates a baseline to compare with future changes in your machine setup configuration. In addition, there have been various additional improvements with faults and roguery improvements. The fault mask parameters motor temperature fault bit is set based on whether an over temperature thermistor exists on the motor. Various parameters for bare roguery motors have now been set. Here we have a showcase of what the final summary now looks like within machine setup. Next, we'll be going over the device catalog updates. Device catalog now features a new tab view. The new dialog view now helps users manage catalog names and descriptions, closing or opening catalogs, and deleting open catalogs. New devices that use a rotary motor now copy the rotation type and motor transmission ratio value from the source device if applicable. In addition, New devices now copy the feedback information from the source motor if applicable. Within the configure workspace, EasyTune has now been made more reliable. Fault mode has now been removed. Furthermore, a restore defaults button has now been added. The restore defaults button opens a dialog for restoring multiple types of configuration items to their default Aerotech values. Users can now pick and choose which values you would like to restore from this page. In addition, there have been various absolute encoder alignment improvements. The module now has smoother axis movement as well as more consistent and accurate results. Furthermore, the module detects motor phasing and modifies required parameters. Lastly, a dialog now tells you what the module will do and the safety considerations involved. Further improvements have been added to our MCD feature by now informing users if any of your machine apps are incompatible with one another. There is now a MachineApps page in the MCD upload that allows users to manage the branding from the upload page. Please reboot your drive-based controllers upon update for the new Automation1 ISMC license key to have an effect. Further updates have been added to our develop workspace into the AeroScript programming language. You can now see the file name and directory via a tooltip when hovering over file names. In addition, the program will now remember the last directory used to open or save the file. Here we have showcased the new MultisinePlus frequency response triggered via an AeroScript function. Various file API functions have been added to the AeroScript as well. The file open text function and the file open binary function now create the file if it doesn't exist when you use file mode.append. The file text read line AeroScript function now supports the following line endings as well. In addition, we have custom G-code snippets added to the programming module syntax editor, a function to set the feed forwarding SSF parameter from AeroScript, new text parsing functions, and a function to convert float point values to their IEEE 754 floating point binary representation. Lastly, we have a couple of other Studio improvements. You can now plot the signals derived from other signals collected in a .dat file. The work without a controller screen now shows the full MCD path. Users can now open .ini files in the controller files module to open them in the programming module. Next, we'll be going over a couple of the API improvements. This includes the .NET C and Python API, as well as the instrument driver for LabVIEW's new help file updates. For our .NET API, we have improved the command queue coding experience. Users can now automatically add all AeroScript lines to a command queue. In addition, you can retrieve the most recently executed command and upload or download MCD files from within the .NET API. Within the C API, the command queue experience has been similarly improved with the ability to add all AeroScript lines in a file to a command queue. In addition, the configuration editing process has become more versatile with the ability to now change the configured programming automation via the C API. The Python API now supports the ability to configure program automation through the Python API. In addition, you can now specify any millisecond value for the period of a data collection configuration within the Python API. Lastly, the instrument driver for LabVIEW help file now has been updated. The help file now covers the following topics: install and access the Automation1 instrument driver, use the Automation1 instrument driver, principles of Automation1 instrument driver, Automation1 examples with the LabVIEW software, guidelines, and more. Please refer to the help file for the full listing. Next, we'll be going into the MachineApps updates. MachineApps now offers even more branding customizability. You can now set the primary color and the primary hover color to further customize the look and feel of the MachineApps Launchpad. The camera module now supports YUV and MJPEG image formats as well. Furthermore, logging messages for long-running operations have now been added. And we now have even more improvements. The server loop behavior at the end of a move has now been improved. There have also been various user experience improvements to the motor phasing module. Several insightful data items have been added to the frequency response module. In addition, the bandwidth of the drive array read function has now been increased to 32,000 bytes per second on a single axis. Some multi-axis drives will have a higher bandwidth. Similarly, the drive array write function has had its bandwidth increased to 48,000 bytes per second on a single axis. It is now possible to retrieve the encoder cosine and sine inputs from the feedback connectors. Lastly, it is now possible for drives with AC motor supply to ignore a temporary loss of the motor supply, and therefore prevent generating a motor supply fault. That's it. Thank you very much for watching this Automation 2.6 training, and I hope this video was helpful.